All right. So, should theism be testable? Adherent Apologetics uploaded a clip from a longer talk that he had with Charles. I'm not even going to try to. Well, what do I think his last name should be? Taliaferro. And Charles is, according to Wiki, an American philosopher specializing in theology and philosophy of religion. He's a professor of philosophy at St. Olaf College, a senior research fellow at the Institute for Faithful Research, and a member of the Royal Institute of Philosophy. He's 69 years old. All right, the best age a person could be. Okay, so um, I want to play some of this and respond to it. I think it needs a deeper talk than a comment would, and I've tried to have a debate with it here in apologetics, and uh, unfortunately did not go well. I really should not have ever agreed to go on modern day debate. Um, that's really what he really wanted to be on there. So, yeah. Now, hold on. I might have to redo this. No. Okay. All right. So, sorry. Let's listen to this.
Another objection I have here, as we talked about this cumulative case, is the idea that, well, maybe there's just no framework in which we can test theism. I hear a lot of people, especially online, that will talk about the idea that we need this like empirical evidence to prove that God exists or things like that. Like all these philosophical arguments are great and good fun, but there's no proof that God exists. We can't put him in a test lab and demonstrate that he's here. So I'm curious, like, how do you respond to this kind of objection to natural theology?
Well, in philosophy, anyway, the notion of proof has almost no place at all.
So, did you hear it? In in philosophy, the notion of proof has almost no place at all. That's the answer. So, why is there no proof? Because you're using philosophy. So why would you use philosophy then? You can't if you can't get a coherent answer with that system, you what use is the system? If you can't prove anything using that system, what's the point? Now, Anti Citizen X has a video that if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Absolutely, the stagnation of philosophy. I put that on my community tab a while back. Absolutely, definitely, you need to listen to that video, watch that video, because what he says there, this guy actually agrees with. So let me harp a little bit more on the fact that he's already admitted there's no proof. Whether he meant to or not, he has admitted that by using philosophy, you won't have proof. There's no place in philosophy for proof. Nobody would agree on any one thing in philosophy. So why do people do it? What's the point of philosophy then?
There's almost no argument that, so there, what are there, around 8 or 9 thousand PhDs in the United States.
Mhm.
There's no single argument that or position that all of us would agree to. So you find proofs in mathematics and logic, of course, but on this point, I I would note that radical skepticism, somebody.
Okay, so you would find proofs in mathematics and logic. Now, I'm not sure if he's referring to formal and or informal logic because logic can also be a subset of mathematical logic. So he might be referring to that. But as far as informal logic goes, if you had a syllogism that's valid and sound, then yes, the conclusion is one that you should look into. It is no longer one that you should be skeptical of. If it's valid and sound, the conclusion flows from it, and there you go. But none of the arguments offered that I've heard and that adherent and apologetic adherent here actually did 3 in a shotgun tactic against me in our debate, which was a very underhanded tactic to use. The mods should have never allowed. Anyway, I could complain about that later. Different video. Those arguments have been debunked by myself and others many times. The Kalam, the cosmology argument, the other, the and the Jesus resurrection thing, and the morals and all that. It's all been taken care of as far as logic goes. The apologists do not care. They refuse to acknowledge the fallacies either because they don't understand logic, they don't care about it, or I don't know, some other thing that I can't think of. But for whatever reason, they will not, have not acknowledged that these arguments are fallacious and fix the arguments, made different arguments, made new arguments. Most of these arguments were made long ago. You have Aquinas, who made a few, and then you have some that appear later on. But they're most of the arguments, they're all very early on. They're not modern arguments. And so new arguments. I saw an hour-long plus video where this guy was pretending to have new arguments, but all he was doing was rehashing the old arguments, just with some new words sprinkled in, and nothing that he said comported to science, what we actually understand about the mechanics of the universe. What he was doing was banking on people that not knowing that. And thinking that the sophisticated terminology means that he's right. He's using philosophy instead of science to talk about the universe. Well, science has a system. And guess what happens in science? You do have an agreement by many on a single topic. There is a single argument that converges science together. Like the only scientists that have a problem with biological evolution are the ones that aren't scientists anymore. They're scientists in name only. They are part of the Discovery Institute or their creation thing or whatever. They've given up on their career, and they have thrown their basket into that so that they can make some money. And they use their credential just to appeal to their own authority. And they get paid however much they get paid for writing really crap articles, to which they had to sign a statement of faith to be part of that thing. So the rest of the scientists all have no problem with biological evolution because it's the truth. In philosophy, you're lucky if you get a couple of philosophers that agree. That's why when you hear these things, you'll see people cherry, but they'll be like, "Oh, look, C.S. Lewis, basically a philosopher. Oh, look, this guy. Here's this guy, and this guy said this." And you're like, "Well, who cares what this person said? Is it true or not?" And the philosopher can never get to what is true. They can only get to what they want to be true or what they believe to be true by citing different philosophers that happen to agree with them. There's no room for proof in philosophy. So it's an empty system. It's a useless system. It's not even a system. The only systems then would be science and logic. That's it. And mathematics. But obviously you can't use mathematics. Although somebody did try to use mathematics to prove God, and that went horribly wrong. Because they weren't actually using mathematics, they were using bad arguments. So if you can't get proof with the system, why would you use that system? If you can't come to a convergence of agreement on a single topic, why would you use that system? Why would you use philosophy? So he is responding truthfully. He's saying there's no proof. There's no proof in philosophy. There isn't any. So why is there no proof for God? Well, because we're using philosophy, and in philosophy, there's no proof at all. So there's your answer. But it gets better. So, because he also goes into a giant tangent here that has no bearing on anything, and I want to play that. So,
somebody who is deeply skeptical about sensory experience, very few philosophers would claim you could prove to the skeptic that the world is as it appears. The certain thing, I think we can probably, I'm sort of with Descartes here, I think that denying the self is probably the most, let me find the best way to put this. That is, denying that you yourself exist seems to lock you into a contradiction because you have to exist.
all right, that's enough of that. So, this giant red herring has no bearing on the topic at hand. The question is, should theism be testable? Zach here says, hey, look, I get this all the time. People say that there should be a way to test God, that we should have some empirical methodology. We should be able to put God in a test tube. What do you say to that? And Charles goes off to talk about as far as I know, a non-existent, hard-boiled skeptic that that denies that they exist, which I wouldn't call that person a skeptic. I would call them crazy. Because in order to not believe that you exist, you actually have to gain a belief. So that's no longer skepticism, in my view. But, that's just me. So this other skeptic that supposedly exists, and he references a couple of people. You can listen to the whole thing. I don't care. I'm done with it. All right. Got my point across. Whatever. You can go listen to the whole thing if you want, because this is a giant tangent that he's going off on. This pretend person that denies that they exist, that you can't prove anything to, no matter what you do, because they don't even believe they exist. They don't believe reality is real. So you can't prove anything to them. So what? I don't care how many of those people you have. And there's like a couple that happen to be atheists on top of that. Okay, and so what? Who cares about them? That doesn't negate your burden of proof at all. That those people are out there, you can't prove anything to them. So what? Who cares? What about me? You could prove it to me if you had this. And you're saying, well, I'm throwing my hands up in the air because I'm utilizing a non-system called philosophy, and there's just no proof in philosophy. Yeah. And that's so why you then use something else to show me the proof. Then if you have no proof, you have faith. That's it. So then why bother with the arguments? You should just say, we have faith in God. There's no proof of God because we're going to use philosophy. And in philosophy, there's no proof of anything. So you can just say whatever you want and it's true or false or whatever. Bananas are purpley orange and taste like rabbits. That's true in philosophy. Whee! There's no philosophy of philosophy, thus it's dead. Unless you're using informal logic, which actually has a system to it. So that's it. And that's the subset of philosophy. But really, I would like to petition for a change of venue. I think that science and logic should be a subset of science, and that science then should just go and say, you know what, philosophy, I don't need you anymore until you get your act together. Let me know when you do that. Because at one point, philosophy was an attempt to find reason, and then they gave up on that. So why? Well, maybe they need to get back to that. But until they do, what's the point of it? And nobody can agree on anything. Does it work? Is it useful? I don't know. What about Hume? What about him? What about Kant? What about him? Who cares? Nobody can agree on anything. What's the point? So then you have to ask the deeper question of why do apologists use philosophy if it is the case that philosophy has no proof in it. And yet they label their videos proof of God and then attempt to use philosophy, which has no proof in it, according to this guy, who is a philosophy person himself. I don't know. You know, maybe because they have, so why not just say, look, it's just faith. Just believe in in this or that God because faith. And that's it. There is no argument. Just be honest. Well, I guess that would put him out of a job, though. All right. Thanks for listening.